It has been some time since you last sat at the table. Let us begin again.
Hello and welcome back to the Bigger Pixel. I am, as always, your host, the Gaming Mandroid. And in today's episode, I wanted to take a second to kind of review and examine a game that just became free on Xbox Live for Gold members called Hand of Fate. This game is not new, by the way. It's been out for almost exactly a year now, actually. But since it became free, I thought there'd probably be a lot of people kind of wondering whether it's worth their time to download it. So Hand of Fate is brought to you by Defiant Development. That is an Australian team based out of Brisbane, Australia. And according to Wikipedia, they only have about 15 team members on their staff. So it's definitely a small company, indie developer. And if you look at their list of games, they've clearly been focused on mobile games prior to this. And this is their first push onto consoles and PCs. So Hand of Fate describes itself as a deck-building, roguelike RPG action game, I guess, and that's a lot of different things, and it's actually pretty accurate, but it's also a little bit misleading, I think. Maybe in the use of the word deck building, that's kind of like a buzzword to pull in, Magic the Gathering players or Ascension players, and it totally worked on me because I do play those games, and when I saw that, my interest was piqued immediately. So let's just take a look. You kind of have to see it in action to kind of get a grasp of how these elements work together, and it does overall work pretty well. But let's just get a look here. Once you start a game, in story mode, you'll pick an enemy, so that's the Jack of Plague. Then you'll watch him deal out a bunch of different cards that are going to be used over the course of the match. So these are all the cards that are going into the dealer's deck. You also have your own deck full of useful equipment cards and stuff, which you can customize. And then he'll lay them out in front of you. And there's a lot of different formations that you can see, but basically the goal for each level of the dungeon is to walk through until you get to that one right there. Like Hitch a Ride is one example of basically an exit card that will take you to the next level of the dungeon, which could be laid out differently. For example, you can see this totally different layout. And the layouts do affect you a bit because every step you take consumes one of your food, and food becomes a precious resource. Once you run out of food, you start starving. When you starve, you run out of health. So there's basically 3 different kinds of encounter cards that you'll find when you step on to each step you take on one of these levels. And the first is definitely an action card like you're seeing here that'll trigger your combat. And once you get into combat, this is definitely going to be a familiar system to you here. If you've played, for example, Shadow of Mordor or any of the Batman Arkham games, you'll immediately find this system very familiar. X to attack, Y to counter, B to stun, A to dodge. It's not raising any eyebrows with its combat here, and some have criticized it, saying that the combat is bland. I wouldn't quite go that far. It's simplistic, but it gets the job done, and there are some interesting, unique weapons and artifacts that keep things interesting. There are also some other, I guess you could say, almost platforming elements that you can see here in this Maze of Traps cards. I'm not sure if there are any other cards that cause a similar effect, but as you can see here, you're kind of navigating obstacles and stuff to get a reward at the end. And you do get rewards. It probably wasn't worth it if you watch. I lost like half my health doing that. But as you can see, at the end, my reward for getting this chest is 15 gold. And gold is another resource just like your food, and you can use it. So that's definitely the second type of cards you can find are shop cards, and there's actually a couple of different shop cards. So this particular example here is a healer, so they actually don't sell items, but they can remove curses, as you can see here, for gold. You can sell your items to them. Not that I've actually done this at all. It does seem like an act of desperation. And you can, of course, also buy food, and buying food is pretty important. Like I said, if without it, you will starve, and starvation is a quick path to death. And all merchants offer food for sale, and most merchants will also sell items, of course. And the great part about buying items through merchants is that they become available to you in the game that you're currently playing, so you'll immediately equip them. The last kind of encounter that you'll find is one like this river that you'll see is kind of like a random chance encounter. It doesn't necessarily trigger any kind of combat or anything, and these chances might be part of action encounters as well. You'll see them all the time, but you'll have multiple different cards, and you'll just have a chance, depending on how difficult this is to pass. There might be 3 fails or only just 1 fail if it's easy to pass, and then you know you're going to pick a card, and if you succeed, you succeed. If you don't, you don't. But also, this river card is a great example of a token card. You can see the gold marker at the bottom of the card. That means that a token is available. If you complete the card in a certain way, the encounter in a certain way, then you'll win its token. And tokens are how you acquire new cards. Now don't worry, even if you die, you will get to keep and open your tokens even after dying, which is what you'll see here in a second. So the tokens don't get lost, and depending on which card gave you the token, you'll get maybe a specific reward or maybe a randomized reward, and it might just be 1 card. This is the token I got for completing the river, you can see, and I got to keep it even though I died, and it just gave me a specific ring here. So you can find all those cards that you've unlocked by going into your deck builder between games. So right now I'm looking at my deck, my equipment deck. So this is where I would find that ring. I don't believe I actually go and look at it here, but that's where I would find that ring once I unlocked it. So here you can switch out weapon cards that will be dealt to you as rewards, just like I gained gold by completing certain things. You can gain an equipment card, and it'll say, you know, that there are actually some really good ones that might say draw 3 pieces of equipment and then pick one. And then it'll look through your deck and it'll draw just equipments out of them, and it might be a hat, it might be one of the main armor chest pieces, it might be a weapon, and then you'll look through them and pick one. But there's also the encounter deck, and you can customize that as well, which is pretty interesting. This is definitely the deck building part of the game. So as you can see, I have a bunch of new cards that are up there at the top, and I don't know what they'll do yet. Whenever you get a new card, you won't be able to look at its description. You have to find it in the game first. So there's an element of risk in incorporating new cards. But these cards actually also manage to convey ongoing quests. So for example, you can see I have the Shadow Agent 1 card here, and when I complete it, it is also a token card. I open its token and it gives me Shadow Agent 2, which is basically the next phase in the quest. So surprisingly, this game manages to kind of have an ongoing story as well. Not that there's like really a main quest line, but there are various quests that will continue to further stages, which is interesting. So if you're wondering about what the Shadow Agent is, that's basically my class, my hero card that I'm using right now, and you can look at it here. This is part of their DLC. I believe the DLC is called Wild Cards or something along those lines, and it costs about $5, and it unlocks all these different classes. Now, what I'm looking at here are the first 3. The first 3 hero cards that are available to you are not really classes so much as difficulty settings, and they're equipped with different starting items, starting cards, which basically affect your starting equipment, your shield, your sword, and all that. But they might also include rule changes. So in the easy difficulty setting, there are certain rules that make things a little bit easier. And then in the warlord setting, not only will you get a cool hat and stuff, you know, good equipment, but you know, it's coming at the cost of increased difficulty, stronger creature attacks, and the bandits getting throwing knives and stuff like that. You also, if you look at the starting stats, you also have less health, you start with less food, and this warlord difficulty actually is pretty hard. Just for the record, I'm gonna go on the record and say that I could only get not even halfway through the game on warlord, and I found it fun. It ramps up the difficulty pretty high, but I did want to go back to normal, I guess, just so I could proceed with my capturing. But so you've pretty much seen the way the game works at this point. Now, whether it's worth it or not. Now, if you're on Xbox and this game is free for you, yeah, absolutely, I'd say this game is worth it. You could easily get 10-15 hours of play out of this, and it's a lot of fun. I think, like I said, I am a little persuaded by the whole deck building element. I'm biased towards that. I think that's very cool and fun, so that got me. Now, I do believe its cost is $25 on Steam. You know what, I'm not even going to say is that worth it or not. I think that's up to you guys. If this looks like a game that you want to try, then obviously you should go get it. I do think it's fun, and it does have replayability. One thing that I didn't cover here and show you guys is that there is an alternate gameplay type other than the story mode. Now in the story mode, he offers, I believe, 12 boss fights, basically 12 levels that you can go through, right, that are increasingly difficult. And actually, for every third boss you face, as you move to the next quartile of the game, I guess, it's actually going to unlock this special card that's going to ramp up the difficulty basically for the next 3 levels, and that card's going to stay after that as well. So by the time you get to that 4th tier, the final stages of the story mode, it's pretty difficult. But outside of that mode, even if you finish that, then there is also the endless mode, which also ramps up the difficulty very fast. In endless mode, you don't even use your own custom starting deck. Instead, everything is very roguelike, and it's being dealt to you as you go, and it's basically just a survive as long as you can kind of a situation. So this game offers a lot of challenge, and I would say it offers a good amount of replayability, especially if you're interested in getting that DLC. The DLC is only $5, and I guess my opinion is if you got the game for free, then why not spend that $5? And if you already dropped $25 in it, why not spend that $5? Because it offers you a lot. So overall, final note, this game is fun. So thank you for tuning in to the Bigger Pixel. I am, as always, your host, the Gaming Mandroid. And if you liked this game, if you liked Hand of Fate, and you want to see some more content of it, please let us know in the comments section below. I do think it would be interesting to maybe examine what some of the better cards available to you are, and just get a little bit more in depth and offer some advice on this game. So if you're interested in that, let me know, and maybe we'll continue and do a little series on Hand of Fate. But for now, please stay tuned to the Bigger Pixel for more content coming to you every week. More Fallout 4 content on the way. So leave a like, leave a comment, consider subscribing, and tell all your friends about the Bigger Pixel.